Hey guys, Rollout here, and welcome back to Builder's Block. Things were really productive this week, especially compared to last episode. I made a lot of progress on ongoing projects, and also some surprising new ones. If you want to see these creations before anyone else, consider supporting the show on Patreon, where I post daily content, and sometimes additional pictures. I usually don't show the robot mode of my Transformers on Builder's Block, but I do share that with my patrons. Is that foreshadowing? Let's find out. So I started off the week by building the second wing of Die Dragon, and I tried really hard to fortify this build so that these wings were as solid as they could possibly be. Most of Die Dragon's mass is in his wings. It's kind of incredible how much more heavy this model is now that both of them are built. And I really wanted it to have swooshability. I wanted to be able to fly it around the room without it falling apart. So I grabbed it in the middle and I kind of swung it around. I simulated barrel rolls and I got it to a point where it's pretty darn solid. Despite the fact that there are some 1 or 2 stud connections in here, none of them are weight bearing, and it does a really good job at staying together. So that's very nice. I'm really satisfied with the hand feel of this model. It has a nice weight to it, and it just feels really solid. So that is very good. You can see that a lot of the parts on the bottom of the wings here are not colored properly. Those will end up being white. You can see that I changed the color of the belly. Before that was light gray. Now it's dark gray. Once I had Die Dragon all built, I realized there's not a whole lot of room to add light gray anywhere else on the model. So I simplified the color scheme a little bit by just changing that to dark gray to match some of the other areas, and I think it looks pretty good. Here is Die Dragon all together. I really like the way he looks now that he is at least physically complete. You can see I changed the legs a little bit. Those are much more solid now. I also changed the feet so that they are much smaller. It turns out the feet didn't need to be as large as they were to support these very heavy wings. He supports himself just fine with these much smaller feet. I think they look a little bit better proportionally. I think they're a little bit more accurate, and it means that they can fold up underneath the body a whole lot neater. I really like that. It means that you can photograph Die Dragon from approximately the angle he appears in on the card, and those feet completely hide away because they were not visible on the original art. So yeah, here is Die Dragon all complete in all his glory. Just a couple parts need to be color corrected and he will be done. I really wasn't sure how I felt about him last week, but now that I have both of his wings built and I kind of feel him in my hand, I'm much more satisfied with the final product. Once I get the pieces I need to truly complete him with all of the right colors, once I get that sticker sheet to complete Die Mariner, I will do some group shots with all of the Diusha dimensional robos all together. I am really satisfied with the way they look together, and it's really nice having the whole team, even if they don't actually combine. On the next day, I really wanted to build a new Transformer. I have been itching to build a new Transformer for a long time now. I met some failure when trying to redesign Donut recently, and that concept is gonna have to go on the back burner. I'm just not getting anywhere with it. For the moment, I just needed to build something new, a fresh new design. A lot of people recently have been suggesting that I build a helicopter transformer, and that's a pretty good idea. It's not something I've tapped into a whole lot. I did build one helicopter transformer a long time ago. It was very small. It wasn't very good. Let's not talk about it, but it is something worth revisiting, and here is what I came up with. Now, I feel a little bit bad that this is such a complete design that this turned out so well. In the past, when I've shown transformers on Builder's Block, it's been like a 2-day process. The first day I would come up with some mechanic that I really couldn't get to work, and then on the second day I would polish it into a complete transformer design. That's how Therafist and Auxiliary were made. On the first day, I just cooked up a complete transformer for the most part, so you don't really get to see the design process, unfortunately. I don't know if there's a better way that I could document this process. I guess I could take pictures of the transformer like intermittently, but I don't really know what a good time to do that in the design process would be. And furthermore, that could just like ruin my creative flow, having that on my mind. So I'm hesitant to do it. Whatever the case, here he is. I just had a really good concept for his robot mode, for what I would do with this rotor in robot mode, and I rolled with that. Once I had that mechanism done, the rest was pretty easy to build around it, and I'm really happy with this guy. Now, this is not the final color scheme, obviously. The days where I would build a monotone black transformer are behind me. I like to do something a little bit more interesting with my color schemes these days. I tried really hard to add sand green to Breakthrough. I really wanted to make trowel brown because that's not a color I've used a lot. And I'd really like this guy to be dark blue. But I wasn't really sure how much of him came in dark blue and if the ratios between what didn't come in dark blue would look any good. I was having a hard time visualizing that for some reason. I'm usually pretty good about it, but when I decided that one thing would be dark blue in robot mode, I just could not imagine how it would look in vehicle mode or vice versa, and I kind of needed some help. So desperate times call for desperate measures, and for the first time ever, I built a transformer digitally. I built this guy in Studio. Now, I don't think this is going to be something that'll happen quite often because I hate building digitally. I just have such a hard time wrapping my head around the model spatially. I like feeling the bricks in my hand. I like knowing what tolerances feel like. I like feeling the weight of it. I just have a much easier time conceptualizing ideas when I have the bricks in my hands physically. I cannot imagine building a transformer from scratch in Studio. But I guess it's nice having the experience of building something in that program for the first time. I did build a few things in LDD back in the day, and I hated it. And I hear some people say that LDD is actually better optimized for actually building, whereas Studio has like a bigger parts library. I didn't like LDD back in the day. I didn't really like building with Studio now, so I don't notice much of a difference. But the fact that Studio has a much larger parts library is more appealing to me, so I guess I prefer it. Another thing that's really cool about Studio is that you can export the model directly to Bricklink. So this was a really easy model to purchase, which I've already done. I've already made my Bricklink orders on this guy, and hopefully those will arrive in the coming weeks so I can do a showcase on this. I think that there's just enough dark blue pieces out there for this color scheme to work, and I am pretty satisfied with it. As per tradition, I will not be showing his robot mode in Builder's Block. You're going to have to wait for the showcase to see that. But I'm really excited about it. I think you'll really like the way this guy looks in robot mode. He's super cool. As for a name, I think I've decided that I'm going to call him Blade Hopper, which is actually a really obscure reference to something I did a long time ago. I will be very impressed if anybody remembers this video, but one of my old unnamed Transformers, I actually made an update video on later and said his name was Blade Hopper, and I wasn't really proud of that video, and I deleted it a long time ago. But yeah, if you remember which of my unnamed Transformers was named Blade Hopper at one point, I am very impressed. That is like insane. Anyway, on the next day, I got most of the pieces I needed to build Leo's throne. I'm still missing the cheese slopes for the end of all of these spikes. I'm still missing a couple pieces for Leo himself. But since I had most of the pieces, I decided to put it together and see how it looks. And I think it looks pretty good. I ordered over 100 of these jumper plates, so I'm really glad I don't hate it. That would be unfortunate, and it does happen. But no, this turned out pretty well. One thing I am on the fence about, though, is which pink color to use for these triangles on the front. Here is this darker pink here, and here is a lighter pink. Now, I think the darker pink objectively looks a little bit better because it has more contrast with the blue. I also think it's a little bit more accurate to the movie. However, in the movie, the throne is a little bit of a darker, more greeny blue color, and so to match that contrast being a little bit higher, I think having the lighter pink is a legitimate option. Also, in this lighter pink color, you have this 1x3 jumper plate that does not come in the darker pink, and it allows this construction here to be a little bit more solid. Also, the darker pink matches the pink color on Leo's shoulder, and I don't actually know if I want the throne to match his armor. I kind of think that having them be different is a little bit interesting, so I'm on the fence about which color to use, and I'd really like to know which you think is better because it legitimately could inform my decision. On the next day, I once again wanted to play around with the Batman accessory pack pieces. They also come in a couple of the new Avengers sets as well. I specifically wanted to play around with the tri-axle piece that's in there, and the first thought I had was that I could use them to make some small little cannons for a mini Berserk Fury. One thing led to another, and I kind of built most of the Zoid around those cannons. Now, I think this looks pretty good, and the ironic part is that I feel this is a much better Berserk Fury than the one I built like 10 years ago at this point. It makes sense, my building style has evolved a lot since then, but even so, even though this is a much better Berserk Fury than my first attempt, I still don't know if it's good enough to keep around. And that's a weird feeling because I made a showcase on the first one and I just kind of don't feel like making a showcase on this one. I don't know. We'll take a look at it. So here it is up on a stand because I did not have the pieces to build a second leg. You can see that the legs are just like a lot more accurate than my first attempt. You can see that the cannons are a lot more accurate than my first attempt. They are supposed to be more blade-like, like this. I actually had to steal some of these swords from Blade Hopper. There are a lot of swords in this episode, but yeah, here it is from the side. You can kind of see the internal work of it without the leg in the way. You can see that the cannons actually open up here. It's on a very finicky, clip connection there, but it does work. All of these panels on the tail kind of rotate to emulate those panels opening on the actual model. You can see that the cheese slope on his foot rotates around to emulate the locks on the back of his feet that support him when he fires the massive charged particle cannon. It's like kind of functional, and that's really cool at such a small scale. This thing is just such a mess to play around with, and I don't know, like it's not in scale with my Murasame lagger that I still have around, and it feels weird. But I did not give up on this design right away. I decided that I would improve it on some level because, to be honest with you, I didn't have many other better ideas on the next day. So I made some tweaks, and I actually did build a second leg. I was missing the claws for a second leg. I only had 3 of those larger claw pieces, so I replaced them with some smaller claws, which I actually like the look of a lot better. I was also missing the red caps for a second leg, and I just replaced them with black so that I could see how he looks with 2 legs to see if that changed my opinion. And you know what? It kinda did. Like, I changed some things to the body. I made it so that the legs could hug tighter to the body than they could before. Obviously, I changed the head. I made it a little bit smaller, which I'm not too thrilled by, but I think those teeth look a whole lot better. The whole construction is a little bit more neat, a little bit tighter. Here he is getting ready to fire the CPC. It's still kind of a fiddly mess, but for a mini Berserk Fury, it is super cool. Like I said, I don't know if it's good enough for its own showcase. This might just exist as a builder's block creation. However, here's the thing. I am going to attempt a Liger Zero at this scale. I don't know if I can do it. But if I can, and it turns out well, I feel that having both of them together retroactively makes this Berserk Fury worth it. I can do a showcase on the both of them, and I'll be satisfied with that. So, we'll see. We'll see if I can make a miniature Liger Zero as well. Something I think about a lot is knowing that my perception of quality is very different than the grand majority of my audience. I sometimes think that I could get by making much worse creations than I feel like I do, and most of my viewers would still eat it up regardless. But like, I can't in all good conscience publish something I'm not genuinely proud of on some level. Not anymore, at least. I don't know if I can fully articulate exactly what my measure of quality is, but just know that a lot of thought goes into whether the things I build are good enough before I make a dedicated video on them. Anyway, special thanks to all of my supporters on Patreon, especially my leader class patrons, Valraven, Beyond the Brick, and Beta. Thanks, guys. Until next time, this has been Rollout, signing off.